which 20 years ago was basically a village in a farming area of a few 100,000 people, called Gurgaon, which is adjacent, is to the southwest of Delhi, and adjacent to Delhi, and is, loosely speaking, I like to say to Americans, Gurgaon is to Delhi what, say, Tyson's Corner is to Washington, D.C. It's an area where a lot of high-rise office buildings have gone up, and a whole lot of high-rise residential buildings have gone up. Delhi itself is constrained in terms of the ability to put up new office buildings or high-rise residential, because getting a site large enough to build something on is extremely difficult, and the land is unbelievably expensive. And the FARs in Delhi, as is true in pretty much all of the big cities in India, are by US or other developed country standards incredibly low. In Delhi, for example, the typical FAR floor area ratio is about 0.75. In Manhattan, the average is, I suppose, about 12 these days, but there's certainly parts of the city where you can go a good deal above 12, and historically we've gone well above 12. So in order to build a building of any size, you have to have a lot of land with very low FAR, and you can't accumulate a lot of land. It just is virtually impossible to do. So that has pushed a lot of development to Gurgaon. But in Gurgaon, a city, as I said, about 4 million people, the power is off every day for approximately 4 hours on average, sometimes longer. So that means every single building, residential and office, has diesel generators and gigantic fuel tanks, and the generators just kick on and off and on and off all day long to keep the power going. The buildings that Heinz has virtually completed, 2 office buildings about 250,000 square feet, and are under construction with a much larger one of about 850,000 square feet. When I left India, and I haven't checked back to see what we figured out, it was not crystal clear where we would get water from for the buildings. It was not at all clear that we'd be able to get power from the utility companies. So you build them with these massive generators, and the plan is you run the generators until you can get connected to power. So when we talk about the shortcomings in infrastructure, it's really pretty profound. The public school system is woefully inadequate. It is so poor that anybody who can afford to put his or her child into a private school will do so. The men who I was, as a quick diversion, but it says a lot about many aspects of India. I was asked after we'd been there about a year, someone said, "How big is your staff?" It was an American who kind of was me. And I said, "Well, we have a cook and a housekeeper, an assistant housekeeper, a guy who comes a couple days a week to do the laundry, a gardener, a woman who comes who's called a sweeper, 2 drivers, and 2 guards who take shifts. So it's about 10 people." He said, "No, I meant your staff at Heinz." And I said, "Oh, 7 people." So we had a full and part-time staff of 10 people, which sounds kind of unbelievable, but to run an Indian household, you kind of need that. And my point was that our drivers, our chauffeurs, who earn in U.S. dollars about $250 a month. So they're making $3,000, $3,500 a year, and we were very generous with bonuses and that sort of thing. At that level of income, they put their kids in the private school. It costs $30 a month. So for $30 a month, you can put your kid in a private school where they'll get a better education than the public school system. So again, just forgive me if it sounds all terribly negative. I'll get positive in a sec. But you talk about this gigantic population, this very young population, but a fairly small slice, although as Zakaria says, a small slice of a very big number is a good-sized slice, but a fairly small slice are really getting well educated in India. Of course, the number of Indians who are spread out around the world who are extraordinarily well educated and bright and incredibly well respected is something we're all familiar with. But you're talking about the very best out of a huge population who have the wherewithal and so forth to have gone other places.